Hello and welcome to the Sonic Cinema Podcast. My name is Brian Scuttle and thank you for joining me at www.sonic-cinema.com. So this discussion is going to be on the Rage Carrie 2, a 23-year removed sequel to Brian De Palma's classic adaptation of the Stephen King novel. And I'm joined on this one by Phil Fasso of Death Ensemble. And I'm pleased to have him on the podcast again. I'm looking forward to this discussion. I think it's going to be pretty fun and interesting one. So, Phil, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast.
Oh, it's always my pleasure to speak with you about films, Brian. And as I said on the other one, there were a number of great films to come out in 1999. The two we are discussing are not those.
No, they aren't. But this is wait. I'm curious. This is going to be an interesting discussion. We talked about End of Days, and that one is both of them are both of us basically agreed that was kind of atrocious. I'm not going to lie. I actually Now I will preface this by saying it's nowhere near as good as the Brian De Palma movie, but I will say I don't think it's terrible. I think it's got a lot of issues in terms of being a sequel to Carrie, but I think when it comes to the idea of a story like Carrie, I think it kind of does a better job than the Kimberly Pierce remake in 2013.
I will agree with that. I will not agree and tell you that this is an awful movie, but that's okay. So let's start off with talking about where the seed of all this is. You know, Stephen King writes Carrie. He was a school teacher at one time. He basically took two girls that were in, he knew from high school, I think, and one that was in his class, whatever, and he kind of merged them into one character and created this story about this put upon poor girl. She's got this overly religious mother, who's basically repressing her from living, and then she's also got these latent telekinetic powers that are also being repressed in her. And when those come out, awful things happen, right? So, as the first adaptation of a Stephen King novel into a movie, they hired Brian Palmer.
Yes.
Who, for me, is the most brilliant visual stylist ever to put, an image to film. The thing I always get watching his movies is how creative he is with the camera. He does all kinds of techniques like split screens, and you get the same thing from three different viewpoints at times, and all sorts of things. Here's a guy who is a master filmmaker.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Trying to recreate Carrie in any form, I'm sorry, you can't close to do what Brian De Palma did. And again, they came out with Carrie 2 in 1999.
Yes.
I believe that the TV movie with Angela Bettis was...
It was a couple of years after this. It was
a couple years after,
I think. Yeah.
So they did it there, and they did some interesting things there, because a lot of Stephen King's novel is actually the story being told with cops interviewing the survivors. So Sue Snell is one of the survivors that they interview. And they use that as a framing structure. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
And I love Angela Bettis. I thought Angela Bettis was great. But again, it's not De Palma.
Right.
Then you get to the most recent one with Chloe Grace Moretz, I believe, was in it, right?
Yes.
And I just thought that...
her mother.
Yes. Yeah. I just thought that... And again, you can't, Lori before this made the what was it, the pool playing one with Paul Newman. I love that flick, and I can't think of the name of it right now.
Oh, Color Money versus
no. The Hustler. There you go. She made the Hustler and was Academy Award nominated for that, and then took off 15 years, comes back to Carrie, and she's nominated for an Academy Award again. Incredible actress. Julianne Moore has her talents, but she's not Barbara Lord.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought that with the new one, it could have done a lot more with the whole cyberbullying thing. I thought they didn't really play that up as they could have, and there are all sorts of things that they could have done. But I think that no matter what you do with Carrie, you're always going to compare it to what Brian De Palma did, and it's always going to fall short. Now, that's not the only problem with this. But no, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, and I will agree with you on all counts there.
Okay.
I was extremely disappointed when I ended up seeing the Kimberly Pierce movie because I was really looking forward to that because Kimberly Pierce, not an untalented filmmaker. She did Boys Don't Cry. She did Stop Loss, both of which were fantastic. I was really looking forward to the work that she would get out of Chloe Grace Moretz and Julianne Moore. And you're absolutely right in that I didn't feel like it went far enough with sort of updating the story. The Rage, so when we go to, and honestly, like the TV adaptation with Angela Bettis, unfortunately, I've not seen. But so going to the Rage, you're right. This overall, this is not a. This is not. It's a very formulaic script. It's a very.
Yes.
It's the ending, the apocalyptic ending of the movie just doesn't work whatsoever. The CG is ridiculous in that movie. I will say and one of the biggest problems with the movie, I don't have a problem with bringing back Amy Irving's character from the original Carrie to sort of tie the new movie together with the original Carrie. I don't have a problem with that. That's fine. My biggest problem is why does Rachel, who's the Telekinetic girl in this movie, have to be related to Carrie as well?
Well, because otherwise she wouldn't be able to call it the Rage Carrie too, which is kind of funny because her name's not Carrie.
Yeah.
Now, the whole thing about that is you actually get scenes with Sissy Spacek in this, but they're ones that they just ported over from De Palma's movie.
Yeah.
So they just stuck films from there as flashbacks. And it's funny because during a number of them, you'd hear Piper Laurie doing her iconic, "They're all going to laugh at you. They're all going to laugh at you."
Yeah.
Which is not a conversation that happened in front of Sue Snell in that movie.
Mm-hmm. No.
So let's.
Well, the thing is, it's like, but I kind of understand because it's a problem that it's a problem that a lot of quote unquote franchises end up having because it's like you feel this natural impulse, you have to connect everything to the original. Like this, like to get way off topic here, this is what infuriated me the most about the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise is that it's the same fucking pirates time and time and time again.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
As opposed to new different pirates in the Caribbean. It's like you're completely wasting an entire franchise for 5 characters. So
well, let's talk about the genesis because I did some research on this film too. So apparently, this was not written to be connected to Carrie.
Correct.
Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I read that in a couple different places.
I read that,
I read that MGM basically got their hands on the script and they said, "Well, this is so close to Carrie. Let's just tweak it a little and make it a Carrie film."
Yeah.
All right? So therein lies your problem because Carrie White, God bless her soul, dies terribly in the original movie, De Palma's, right?
Yes.
And she unfortunately, she's like doomed to die from the second they're throwing tampons at her at the beginning.
Right.
And that's kind of sad, And there's an arc to that where, you say to yourself, wow, this poor girl went through all this. She finally had a shot at being normal, right? And then some kids fuck things up for her, and all of a sudden it's a disaster, and she ends up killing all of them and basically killing herself, right?
Yeah.
So that happens, right? So that is that, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is no reason on earth to make a sequel to that movie.
Right.
Now, not only that, but when you look at what they do with Stephen King's franchise, a lot of them, there's no reason to have Children of the Corn 2, let alone Children of the Corn 27,
Yeah.
It's just that Stephen King's name, even today, I mean, with it coming out a couple of years ago and, the Castle Rock series that J.J. Abrams produced, King is hot again now.
Yeah.
So even in this period, you know, and again, I've been reading Stephen King. The first adult novel I ever read was Cujo back in the '80s when I was a kid.
Yeah.
You know, I love that novel, love that movie. He's never been my favorite author. You know, he does a lot of things that I like, and he does a lot of things
Yeah.
that, you know, whatever. I'm not going to get into that. The important thing is that his name still has cachet.
Mm-hmm.
So they came across this script and said, well, you know what? If we make it a Carrie sequel, then it'll draw eyes. It'll bring people in. That's pretty much, I'm sure, what the thinking was, you know?
Yeah.
So they morphed it into that, and it becomes this. Now, that's the background. So there's problems in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, there's no reason to connect this girl to Carrie at all. None.
Yeah.
Okay? So there is one good scene that I will talk about later, but we'll get to that later because I will get to Amy Irving as Sue Snell. We'll get to all that stuff in a little bit. But
Yeah.
so that's the origin. Now let's talk about the execution. Brian De Palma's film starts off with an absolutely terrifying scene that doesn't have telekinesis or monsters or anything. It's this poor girl being harassed as she's taking a shower and everything's fine. She gets done in the gym and she's taking a shower and all of a sudden she has her first period.
Mm-hmm.
And because she's so repressed and her mom is keeping her from being an actual woman, an adult,
Yep.
wants her to be this little girl forever, she's horrified. She has no idea what's happening.
Yeah.
And then all these terrible girls see that and start to throw tampons at her.
Yeah.
And it doesn't sound like it sounds, you know, if you said, oh, well, this girl was in the shower and people started throwing tampons, you may think it's a joke, but the way it's executed is absolutely terrifying. Because I'm in Carrie at that moment. I'm in her head. Sissy Spacek is so convincing that I'm buying in from the first scene in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm already terrified, and nothing supernatural has happened at all.
Yeah.
Flash forward to 1999, and Carrie 2 starts out with a woman painting a wall wreck.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, how? How do you choose that to be your starter?
Well,
right?
And I will say, I mean, I think there are interesting choices in this movie. Like you said, it didn't necessarily start as a Carrie movie. It's actually, and the script is actually inspired by a real life case of high school jocks who chronicle their sexual conquests for sport and bragging rights. And you see that in this movie. And basically, Rachel, after seeing her best friend kill herself, basically sort of become, you start to see her, she sort of becomes sort of this avenging angel, I guess, and she's got telekinetic powers, and the thing is, it's like that's an interesting idea. I think that is an interesting choice, and it's like it's something that it's one of the things in this movie that I really thought, okay, this is a good way into this premise. It's a good way into this premise. Part of the problem is Rachel was not necessarily, and to your point of bringing up that amazing opening scene, Rachel is not in the original Carrie. I mean, the opening scene of the original Carrie. Yeah. Rachel was not a victim of this case. Of these.
No, I thought that was really weird too. I thought it was really weird that, and the whole thing is, so her friend goes out and she meets her friend who's Mina Savari.
Yeah.
From 1999's Oscar darling American Beauty, right?
And American Pie.
And American Pie a year later, yes.
American Pie, the exact same year.
Yes. So here's her. She meets her friend on the bus. Her friend's all excited. I got something to tell you. I'm not going to tell you right now. Right? So then we find out that she went out and slept with this guy, and she's all excited. She lost her virginity, apparently. And then we find out that these guys are playing this disgusting game with an actual notebook where each guy's got his name, and then they write down points. And you know what? I don't really buy into the term toxic masculinity. I think it's overused. I think everyone's a little too sensitive today. But if there was ever a case of toxic masculinity in a horror film, it's these jerks, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no way. So these guys are just disgusting. They're subhuman creeps, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of whom is one of the sons from Home Improvement, by the way.
Yes.
Which,
yes.
as soon as I saw him on the screen, I'm like, oh my god, this kid. So I'm thinking Tim Allen and the guy on the other side of the fence every time he comes on the screen.
Yeah.
But so the thing is, so she's got this secret. And she's gonna tell her. She's gonna tell Rachel later on, and then it cuts this. It's this weird way it's cut. So you don't really like. There's no connective tissue, but then you see her, and she looks very upset. Rachel's friend.
Yeah.
And she goes onto the roof where this is the only school in the world, I'm sure, that has a gardening club that has plants on the roof.
Right.
And she decides that she's going to kill herself, and she throws herself off the roof and lands onto a car, right? And Rachel, see, here's part of my problem. So Rachel sees this, you know, and she's, you know, upset, and then you see all the lockers blow open. So this is the first big scene of the telekinesis, right? Yeah. So the lockers blow open, and okay, so Carrie, you know, Rachel's got something strange going on with her, but whatever. That's besides the point. So, you know, my thing is later on you see her at work with her headphones on, and she's at a photo mat where she works, and she doesn't look like she's like heartbroken by this.
Yeah.
I've had the same best friend forever, right? Mm-hmm. He's been my friend since 9th grade. I'm 46 now. For more than 30 years, this guy's been my best friend. Even back then, if he had died, God forbid, if he had died our senior year, I would have been mortified for weeks.
Yeah. She's
just like, oh, well, everything's fine. So again, you know, it's a matter of, we talked about tonal issues in End of Days. My big thing is she's not nearly, and again, the actress, I forget her name, she does a competent job. I don't blame her.
Yeah.
But she's not nearly as affected in this as I would think a student that age would be, you know? And I don't think that's on her. I think that's more on Kat Shea, who directed this, because Kat Shea, not Brian De Palma on the director's scale, you know?
Well, and the thing is, it goes into, like, because a lot of horror movies have this issue where it's like, you know, a lot of more modern horror movies have this issue where it's like, people don't necessarily deal with death in the same way that you would expect them to in real life. And it's like, there are very few horror movies that are really effective in this way. And it's like, what you're pointing out is, yeah, I mean, it's absolutely true, but I mean, it's also an issue. Like, this is a very 90s, it's not only a very 90s teen movie, it's also a very 90s horror movie. Where it's like, a lot of horror movies, not all, but a lot of horror movies have this issue where it's like, they don't, it's about getting to the horror. You know, everything else is not really, is marginalized, and it's all about getting to the horror imagery.
So speaking about that, I want to go back real quickly to where her friend throws herself off, Mina Savari, who, by the way, is in this film with the kid who plays Shitbrick in American Pie.
Yeah.
So you have two American Pie alum here.
That's right. I forgot he was in that too.
Oddly enough. So the thing is, so like to puncture, we really need to get into a conversation about these guys, but this is how I'm going to start this off, right? They're so toxically, disgustingly obsessed with their masculinity and their arrogance and football players and all that. And one of them pops onto the screen, and it's shot from inside the window. So you see the girl's face is pressed up and there's blood everywhere and broken glass. And the kid is like, man, whose car this is. That person should be really pissed.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, like, you're hitting me over the head with it now, you know?
Yeah.
So the problem is, so I do find it interesting that it was basically Christy Hartigan in the first one. And the women, you know, you had P.J. Souls' character, I can't remember, but it was mainly females who were the antagonists in the first one. I did find it interesting that now it's males and it's these quote unquote these guys who think they're alpha males,
Yeah.
and they're more obsessed about the football team than the fact that the kid from Home Improvement technically committed statutory rape, which is it's just I don't remember if that was going on culturally at that point. I know that stuff's a lot more prominent now with the Me Too movement, but I find it absolutely disgusting that these characters act the way they act in this film. So again, I think if this thing does everything right, it's framing what high school males, actually what any age male should never be. You know?
Yeah.
Like you said, they turn the whole thing into a game that they're going to do. And I did not realize that was based on a real thing. I could see high school males on a football team doing that set.
Yeah.
And that's disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that has some basis in reality, that's probably creepier than anything that happened on the screen.
Yeah.
But you have the one guy who thinks, the one alpha jock there who thinks that, first off, he goes to the photomat and offers to pay for the film. He's going to buy her off and get the film.
Yeah.
Her best friend died, and she's got pictures of the best friend with the Home Improvement kid who slept with her.
Yeah.
Right? So he's going to buy her off, and then she won't take money. So she says, "Oh, well, I'll come back after you're done. We'll hang out, have a good time. I'll drive you around." Basically implying that, hey, I'll get you laid. You can sleep with me. The greater glory of life, you can sleep with me.
Mm-hmm.
And she responds, "Oh, well, I'm a dyke." So, it was so, my skin cringed every time these guys were on the screen, Brian.
Yeah.
I have to say it. If this movie did anything right, it made me embarrassed that I am a male among males like those type guys.
Yeah.
Such as those type guys,
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we know, and again, it gets kind of cartoonish at points with it. But again, the whole point is that there are guys that are like that. And that's just thick and embarrassing.
And I think that's one of the... And I agree. I do think that's one of the... Now, yes, they do get cartoons with it. You're right about that. And I do... And that's one of the things that registered with me about the movie is that how effectively I feel like overall, I think it captured that moment. And I mean, I feel like it's a movie. You would hope that they would obviously give it a little bit more weight now, but if this movie had come out like 6 months ago, I can see it resonating. I can see it resonating, and as part of the problem is they basically frame it as a sequel to Carrie. And part of the problem with that is, well, you have to connect it to Carrie somehow. Oh, she's got telekinetic powers. Well, how does she have telekinetic powers? Oh, her father happened to be, Carrie White's father as well. How is that possible?
Which absolutely, yeah, I was going to say, because he's got to be, he must have slept with the mother about 15 years after Carrie was born, maybe.
Yeah.
And it's just like this throwaway thing in there where it's just like, hey, you know what? She had the same dad. Oh, well, you have the insane mother telling Sue Snell that he had the same dad. So you don't even have a reliable person telling you that information.
Yeah,
right?
And the thing is, it's like, I think I feel like there's probably a way they could have done this and still sort of sold it as a sequel to Carrie without having that direct connection to, oh, she's Carrie White's half sister. It's like you have Amy Irving's character right there. It's like that's all the connection I feel like you should have to make.
Well, just think about it this way. Let's go back to
like she's seen this type of thing before. And it's like that's one of the. It's like if you do nothing else to connect it to the De Palma film, that's fine. Just have Amy Irving. There's like I can't remember. She's a counselor, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, let's just think of it this way for a second. Let's go back to Stephen King, right?
Yeah.
Stephen King wrote The Shining. Now, I know you're a huge Shining fan. We've had our debates back and forth, you and I, about that movie.
Yeah.
He wrote The Shining. took him about 30 years, I guess, no, maybe even more, to write a sequel to The Shining, right?
Yeah.
He wrote Doctor Sleep.
Yeah.
No, I haven't read Doctor Sleep. I've read The Shining. I've seen both versions of it. The thing is that he didn't take Danny Torrance and put him back in the Overlook Hotel. That would have been ridiculous.
Yeah.
So what he did was he created a whole new plot and moved things in a different direction. You still have The Shine in there, and you still have some stuff going on from what I understand. But the problem with this film is it's a sequel, but it's really a poorly made remake at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's part of the, like, so think of it this way. You want to take a girl who's got these powers, even if you want to have Sue Snell in it one way or another. I can accept that.
Yeah.
And I think Sue Snell would have been great because Sue Snell has been haunted by this. It's obvious from Amy Irving's performance, which I thought was a little flat, by the way, but I think that's the way she was directed.
Yeah.
But it's obvious from her performance that she's haunted by what happened to Carrie.
Absolutely.
You know? And it's kind of funny that even after all these years, she tried to redeem herself by sending Carrie to the prom with her boyfriend, and that turned out disastrous.
Yeah.
So even after all these years, I'm getting the idea that Sue Snell is so invested in Rachel because she's trying to fix the sins of the past. She can't save Carrie.
Yeah.
Carrie's dead, but she can save hopefully Rachel. Right?
Yes.
Makes sense. All right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the whole thing is that, we've seen this before.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen all of it before. We've seen it tweaked a little differently here, but it's not like there are so many things you could do. If you would have taken Carrie and put her, I don't know, anywhere. So you want to take Rachel and say she's telekinetic. You want to make the Carrie connection. You want to have Sue Snell in it one way or another with Amy Irving playing her. Why do it in high school again?
Yeah.
Why do this? Because it's a retread at that point. There's nothing creative there.
Yeah.
And again, that's the whole, I'm sure part of it was that, like I said, this was originally not a Carrie script.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't intended that way. But even if that was the case, have somebody rewrite it. Put it in some different milieu.
Yeah.
Put it somewhere different, Have the character be a little older or a little younger. Have her be a grade schooler or have her be a 20-something in an office somewhere.
Right.
Do something different with it,
Yeah.
As opposed to, all right, well, here's a girl with telekinetic powers in school, and I was going to say she's bullied, but she's really not bullied till the end of the sequel, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she's not. So, there's so much that I just think that there are so many missed opportunities if you want to take the source material and propel it forward instead of, just regurgitating the same stuff.
No, that's absolutely true. And no, it goes to the lack of originality and boldness when it comes to Hollywood doing sequels, because it's like to them sequels equals safe. So it's like, oh well, we have to do, if we're going to do a sequel, we basically have to do the exact same thing. I mean, do you? I mean, I get that, there are times where it's like, yeah, you do something new with a sequel, you get burned, but at the same time, there are other, it's like, I think especially with something like Carrie, with the Rage, or, with this concept, like you said, do it in, even if you don't do it in the exact same way, do it in a way that at least makes you feel like you've earned it and earned the idea of taking a character, even if it's just a character from the original, and propelling them forward into a different story. And, exactly. Sue Snell, because of the fact that she's really the only surviving witness to what Carrie did, is a good witness for that, and it's a good she's a good protagonist, but it's like, give her something to do that's more than just, oh, I'm basically watching history repeat itself.
Well, yeah, because what this sequel does with Sue Snell's character is make her a passive observer more than anything else.
Yeah.
It's kind of like she's a throw-in. Yeah. And again, I understand you want to make a tie to the original, but if you're going to have Sue Snell in there, do something with it. Mm-hmm. The only scene, and I'll get back to what I said earlier, the only scene that I found really exciting in this film was when she's like, Carrie, she's like, Rachel, I need to show you something.
Yeah.
And then she takes her to the ruins of the school that she was in that Carrie burned down.
Yeah.
And I thought seeing that school in that state of disrepair and breakdown and what that must do to Sue Snell's soul, I thought was really intriguing. Unfortunately, there's not much like that in this scene, in this movie, because a lot of it's just a retread.
Yeah.
So you get, she falls for the jock. He's even a football player. So it's just, same thing over and over again. And can we talk about Jason London's poor acting in this flick? Oh my God. I'm not saying that the London brothers are, like multiple Academy Award nominees or anything, but oh my God. Could you have a flatter here? Okay, so he's a good looking kid. How about having her fall for somebody with some charisma?
Yeah.
Not somebody who happens to not somebody who happens to drive her and her dog to the vet. Her dog, by the way, which gets run over by a fucking, I think it's a pickup that's pulling its trailer, right?
Yeah,
I'll get to the trailer in a second. So it's pulling its trailer. You see like 16 wheels going over the dog. You see the dog flip around and roll over.
Yeah.
And then she brings it to the hospital. They bring it to the hospital. It's like, oh, it's got a couple broken bones and it has lost some blood, but it'll survive. It'll be fine. Well, by the way, I do want to bring out one thing real quickly. There is one more connection, and I caught it. This is the first time I caught it watching it tonight because I don't know how I've seen this flick a couple times already too, but I have. If you watch very quickly what that guy is hauling in that trailer when he hits the dog, it's a bunch of pigs.
Wow. So
oddly, that is the only other connection between this and the first movie.
Yeah. Wow. I obviously I didn't pick up on that, but yeah, that's yeah. No, and it overall, I mean, look, this is a very predictable sequel. It's like because it goes exactly the way you expect it to go, and it's like that ending at the end, the apocalyptic ending at this one. It's like it's ridiculous. It is so ridiculously shot. The effects are awful. They do not.
Oh, but we need to take a deep dive on this finale. Oh my God! All right, so instead of the high school, because obviously this is not the same film, so we're not going to use the high school. They decide to have this at one of the jocks' houses at a house party, right?
Yeah.
After the big football game, right? So Carrie. And again, there's a scene earlier where that blonde girl makes friends with her out of nowhere. See, the whole thing is like Sissy SpaceX Carrie in that movie, in the original, was so needy that it made sense when Sue Snell came to her to try to redeem herself, that it made sense for Carrie to gobble up that attention.
Yeah.
Whereas Rachel, in this movie, seems like she's kind of self-confident. Like she doesn't seem to have problems with much. So, again, this blonde girl who's, hanging out with jocks and everything, and the blonde girl's friend who's pissed off that Jason London doesn't want to sleep with her anymore, wants to sleep with Rachel. So the blonde girl meets her at the makeup department in the mall, and all of a sudden, they become instant friends. To the point where to the point where Rachel, instead of waiting for her boyfriend who's just made the big touchdown in the game, instead of waiting for him to come out, will hop in a car with her and a bunch of these jocks that earlier in the film threatened to kill her, right? She'll hop into a car with them. They broke a window and all that. She'll hop into a car with them to go to this house, right?
Yeah.
So it turns out that she's had sex earlier in the film with Jason London's character.
Yeah.
I think his name is Jesse in the film. So she's had sex with him earlier. It was a big, moment for her. It's her first time. It's really special. Jesse really cares about her and all that, right?
Yeah.
So while she's there, they give her drinks. Now, I can't imagine somebody that self-confident who appears to be a smart character, even at a high school level, taking drinks that have been made at a party like this from these guys.
Right.
These toxically masculine, rapish jerks, right?
Yeah.
So she decides, okay, so I'm going to take a drink. So then by whatever means, it turns out that they're going to put something on the TV.
Yeah.
And they have this notebook where they actually keep stats of who slept with who, and they give them number grades, right? So it turns out that while Jesse was having sex, she was having sex with Jesse, that they filmed it.
Yeah.
And they're projecting it on this giant screen, right, at this kid's house, which triggers the Carrie ending, basically, right? So many things don't make sense in this ending, it's ridiculous. First off, the characters start flipping out, everything's on fire, same shit as the first one, right?
Yeah.
But one of the first things Rachel does is break all the windows in this house, right? So she smashes all the windows with her psychic powers, right?
Yeah.
So there's a scene almost immediately after that where all the kids are trying to get out the front door. Okay?
Yeah.
So you see the logistical problem in that. Why aren't they just walking out the fucking broken windows, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So this thing is so poorly planned.
Yeah.
So Jock A, kid from Home Improvement, and the blonde girl decide, okay, now we have to get weapons. So don't ask me why this guy has like 6 harpoon guns in his dad's office. There is literally an entire case of harpoon guns, right? Was he going to take 5 of his best friends out whale hunting?
Oh, God, I forgot about this. Oh,
so they smashed the window and they grabbed.
6 months since I've seen this, but yeah.
So they smashed the window because he's like, oh my God, it only has the keys.
Yeah.
So they smashed the windows, grabbed the harpoon guns and a flare gun, right?
Yeah.
So now Carrie is going through her thing. She's doing a sissy space deal. She's slaughtering everybody in sight, killing them all. And then, poor Sue Snell, right?
Yeah.
Poor Sue Snell, because she spins her ass. With her mind, she manipulates the gun out of one of the guy's hands, shoots the harpoon out of it. It goes through one of the jock's heads, through the front door, and Sue Snell happens to be trying to get in.
Yeah.
And it goes right through Sue's head. So let me ask you a question. Did Sue Snell have any kind of arc in this film?
No, not really. Not really at all. No.
I mean, if you're writing this film, and you're obviously a cinephile, and I love film, I've done screenwriting, I've done all kinds of writing in my life, aren't you going to give her some kind of better ending than that, Brian?
You would hope so. I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's like, yeah, it goes to just how slapdash this movie is when it comes to, if you're going to do a sequel to Carrie, it's like, this is obviously not how this is, in the end, this is not how you want to do it. You should, if you're going to absolutely connect it to Carrie with Sue Snell, it's like, no, you want to give Sue Snell more of an arc of something to do. And yeah, I mean, like you said, she's basically a passive observer in this movie, as opposed to being an important part of it. And yeah, the idea of her ending that, her role in this movie ending that way, it's like, oh no, that's not how it should go at all.
I was just so disappointed. I mean, if you're gonna have her die, have her die doing something heroic. Have her die trying to save Carrie from the jocks. Have her die, whatever. Do something that's going to have some meat on it, and just make that character's arc. Because, you know, she's been tortured for God knows how many years now.
Yeah.
She's trying to make sure the thing doesn't recycle itself again. And then you just randomly, it was like the most sudden thing. I'm like, oh my God, the spear just went to her head. And she's pinned to the door.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a total waste of bringing that character back. And, you know, it's just one of many problems this film has. So then Carrie ends up outside by the pool. Carrie, if you think Carrie. Rachel ends up outside the house by the pool. And it's like a Mexican standoff with the blonde girl and the alpha jock there and the home improvement kid all have the guns, right? They have the spear guns, right?
Yeah.
So by whatever machinations happen, the spear, the blonde girl, I can't even believe I'm going to say this. The blonde girl ends up somehow or another shooting the homeless kid's balls off with the. I can't believe I'm saying this, with her harpoon gun.
Yeah.
So you see his sash basically kicks off out the back of his shorts and ends up in the pool. I'm sorry. I know. I get the whole point, but it's the whole it's the whole castration thing.
Yeah.
I get that. I understand. This is the person who set this whole thing in motion, right? But it's so silly the way it's put together, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, oh my God, she just blew his testicles off and then went out the back of his shorts in the pool, right? So then she uses her psychic powers to, I guess, blow the blonde girl's eyes out or crush them in. Something happens where the blonde girl ends up eyeless, and I think it's why she shoots Home Improvement through the crotch.
Right.
I think it's what set that up.
Yeah.
So you have now her, and you have the Alpha Jock guy, right?
Yeah.
Who I forgot totally that he had the flare gun. So he shoots the flare, and it goes through her, right? And you think she's going to die, and she falls in the pool, and then you think, all right, well now she's dead. But of course, this is a horror movie. You can't have the bad guys win.
Nope.
So in what I believe is supposed to be a callback to, remember in the original when Sue Snell goes to visit, or she's having that dream where she goes to visit the grave and Carrie's hand comes out of it, grabs her by the leg, she's just freaking out. Well, in kind of an inverted callback, Carrie's hand comes out of the pool and she grabs the Alpha Jock and pulls him into the pool, right?
Yeah.
So, again, this is so convoluted, Brian. Did any of this need to be this difficult?
No.
No, right?
No, God, no. It's so absurd the way it's staged, too, because I had forgotten about the harpoon guns and stuff like that. It's like, so I didn't even think about how ridiculous it is that they have these. I was just marveling at how absurd it was, this whole sequence was just in general. It's such a ridiculous scene. It's like
it's a mess.
By this point you can't take it seriously as a sequel to not just a great horror movie, an Oscar-nominated horror movie, because Sissy Spacek and Piper Laurie were nominated for Carrie, and rightfully so. And yeah, you just can't take, by the end you just can't take it seriously, and it's disappointing because I will contend there are interesting ideas in this movie. There are interesting ways if you're intent on doing a new take on Carrie, even if whether you connected to the original or not, there are interesting ideas in it. The problem is the execution.
But let's take a look at. So let's just discuss before we get back into the ending of the finale here. Let's just take a look at what Brian De Palma did in his, right?
Yeah.
So if we go through the sequence, Carrie's dancing with William Catt at the prom. Everything's thrilling, right? She's just swirling around. She's happy. Probably for the first time in her life, she's smiling. She's legitimately happy to be alive, right?
Yeah.
So then she and it's rigged for them to win prom, Queen and King. So they get up on the stage, and there's this whole intercutting thing with Christy and John Travolta's character playing with the string and the pool blood, the bucket of the pig blood and all that.
Yeah.
So there's all this stuff going on. And it's edited brilliantly, and it's shot brilliantly.
It is.
Right? So you get to the point where they pull the cord. It's in slow motion. You see the blood drop and splatter. And I'm just, like I said before, with that first scene in the movie, every time I watch Carrie, I'm standing in Carrie's soul, in Carrie's body at that point, and I feel her, you know?
Yeah.
How horrifying. And again, think of what Brian De Palma did. Girl, scary, throwing up tampons at the beginning, no supernatural stuff, absolutely terrifying, right? Get to that scene with the pig's blood, but even before everything breaks into chaos, absolutely terrifying because it's so human, you know?
Yeah.
It's so absolutely human what Carrie's going through. So then you have Carrie, and Sissy Spacek's look is brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
So she's got the freak out face, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden she's possessed, and now she's on a rampage. So she closes the doors, and she turns on the fire hose, and all of a sudden everything's going nuts. Kids are trying to escape, and the one thing about that is, like, the the principal and the one who's the gym teacher who she actually likes, a couple of people who are trying to be on Carrie's side, and William Cat, who's done absolutely nothing wrong, they all die in this horrible thing because now her rage is no control of it. It's uncontrolled, and it just goes wild, right? Okay. Now take what we just described in this new one, in the sequel, right? Okay. So they go out, and they're in the pool now, and they're fighting, and somehow the guy triggers the pool cover to, I guess it's an electronic pool cover, automatic pool cover.
I think so. Yeah, it was.
It's really weird because the pool cover starts to close over the pool, right? Yeah. So they're struggling and whatnot, and this and that, and then Carrie gets out of the pool somehow, and then this is like the most anticlimactic death for a bad guy. The guy just drowns because he can't get out of a pool cover.
Yeah.
So it's like, you have to be kidding me. Where's the pathos? Where's the drama?
Yeah.
Where's the comeback in this? Like, he's going to drown and that's it? You know what would have made more sense? If she threw him off the roof and he landed on a car. Because that would have brought us right back to the beginning, and there would have been some poetic justice in that. Instead, you get this weak at the knees, weak sauce killer where he drowns. Okay, so whatever. So then Jason London's character comes back, and he's trying to convince her that because now she thinks that he's in on this whole thing, and it was for the points, right?
Yeah.
So now she's loosening bolts on part of the ceiling as she's talking to him, and he's trying to convince her.
Yeah.
And then he's like, Carrie, I love you. And then so then the camera pans to the television screen, which apparently has been playing their sex tape long past the point where they've actually had sex.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because he says, I love you. And then he keeps saying it because they keep repeating it, but every time there's like a zoom and enhance on his face.
Yeah.
To the point where at the end it's just his mouth. Because then he says, I love you in real time to her then, and that's when he says that. So, because she loosened the bolts, the freaking ceiling falls in on her, right?
Mm-hmm.
But ridiculously, it doesn't land on him, it lands on her.
Yeah.
So then, the house is on fire, he's trying to get her out from under it, and she's just like, leave me. He's like, no, I can't, I love you, blah, blah, blah. And then she uses her psychic powers to throw him across the room by the door so he can get out. So I'm like, why didn't Rachel just turn off herself?
Yeah.
She's obviously still got her telekinesis.
Yeah.
Or, even better, if she saw it falling, why not just stop it from falling?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's just so over the top absurd, and it's silly.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it would have ruined a good movie. It just took a bad movie and made it even worse for me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, again, it's just that, my thing is, in a horror movie, every death should be earned one way or another.
Right.
You know? And none of those deaths are earned.
No.
So, again, you have the girl's eyes get crushed, the one guy, gets speared through the balls, and the other guy drowned in the pool. And then Carrie, who's supposed to be our lead, was supposed to sympathize with her, gets crushed by a piece of house that she could have stopped from falling on her or him, or she could just have taken it off her. So that's not an earned death in my book, Brian. That's an insult.
No, and I mean it's the problem with this is that it falls into like so many of the cliches of the horror genre in general. And that's one of the biggest problems with it. And I mean, there are a lot of problems with this, as we've discussed. I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like, wow, there's potential here. There's potential here, even if it's not for a great movie, at least for a at least for something worthwhile, and it wastes like all of that potential by being stupid. And it's stupid in all of the worst ways that you see horror movies be stupid at, and especially teen horror movies be stupid at.
It's aggressively stupid.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. You know, it's aggressively stupid. Even if you wanted to stage something like that at the end, and even if you wanted to make it, again, you know what? You can call it a ripoff or you can call it a callback. Even if you wanted to call back to the prom,
yeah,
and you wanted to have it at this kid's house, there are a million ways to do it better than what they did with it.
Yeah.
And that's the shame of it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You take a character that I was supposed to care about, and you killed her, and now, and now I don't even know why. You know, because is it supposed to be because Carrie died, so she's got to die, and is that what's going on here?
I mean, that's the only way that's the only thing I can think of. And
it's just like they were trying to call. It looks to me now that I'm thinking about it that they were trying to do all these callbacks that just don't work.
Yeah.
You know. And if you had a better writer and a more talented director, you know, and you had something that wasn't, you know, just a blatant ripoff of the original, I think he could have done a lot with it. Again, is it ever going to be? Is it ever going to be the Promise film? No film involving Carrie is ever going to be.
Yeah.
But if you're not going to give me the Tom, give me something interesting. Give me something well made. Give me something challenging. Don't give me this, you know.
Yeah.
And that's the shame of it, you know. And there are certain scenes like some of the stylistic choices. Every time she uses psychic powers, things go black and white for some reason.
Yeah.
Which I just thought was a weird choice in this movie. You know, I'm like, why is everything black and white all of a sudden?
Yeah.
Like you did that whole thing with the paint at the beginning, the red paint. Why not make the scenes red?
Mm-hmm.
You know, then you have some kind of tie-in. It makes sense as opposed to, wow, everything's black and white. She must be using the powers again, you know?
Yeah.
So, again, if you had a director who was a better director and you had a better script, you could, even if you want to ape Carrie and you want to do the whole, you know, retread thing, there are better ways to do it than this. And that's the shame, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, you know, we talked about the remake from a couple of years ago with Chloe Grace Moretz.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just time for a property to go away and not be remade. You know, and I think that we've definitely gone past the saturation point where Carrie is what Carrie should be, because, you know, between this sequel and the television series and the remake, I think that you've basically taken all the power of Carrie away from her, and that's a shame.
Yeah, and I mean that's one of the problems with Hollywood, especially when it comes to now. I mean, we see so many reboots and remakes and stuff like that. Now, I mean, I will say I'm a fan of what they're doing with it, but that's because at least with it there was room to improve the way that they handled the adaptation previously, and there was also room to do something different. And I mean, I'm looking forward to what they're doing with what they do with chapter 2 of that, you know. But I mean, I'm with you. It's like, with Carrie, I don't know that there's really anything left to do. And it's like, you know, the fact that you had such talent behind the 2013 movie, the Kimberly Pierce movie, it's like, I mean, it just kind of shows that it's like, it's probably time for, find a different Stephen King property to adapt. See if, you know, I'm sure there are a few out there that, you know, might have something interesting. So,
you know, the thing is that De Palma, from the very first time I saw Carrie, and it had to be on television when I was a kid back in the 80s, you know, I've been invested in Carrie White ever since, you know, and I've been invested in Sissy Spacek's version of her. You know, I remember when I started getting into Audible books, it got to be like 15 years ago or so.
Yeah.
The first book, you know, I joined Audible.com, and they're like, okay, $2 a month for whatever price it was. And the first book I got was Carrie, because I'd never read it before. So I'm like, all right, so you have this available. Let me check this out, you know? And, it's one of those stories that is just, it's been done. You can't ever top what De Palma did,
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that poor Carrie can't escape her legacy. And that's kind of sad. But anyway, I will say something positive. This was by far better than End of Days.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I can say that.
That is true. I mean, that is definitely something to be said for. It's like it still makes a lot of bad choices and how it goes about the subject. It still makes a lot of bad choices in terms of writing and directing, but yes, it is. It's slightly more successful, if I dare say that, than End of Days.
Well, fortunately, that Katche did not cast Arnold Schwarzenegger as Rachel.
This is true, and that would have been a very weird choice indeed.
By the way, while we're on the subject of telekinesis and Brian De Palma, have you ever seen the movie that he made after Carrie the Fury?
I did watch it once. I think I need to see it again because it was good, but I think I need to watch it again and really sit with it again. De Palma is definitely somebody I need to get more into some of his films with, especially some of his early work. The Fury is one that I definitely want to check out again because
the Fury is really interesting.
I know I have watched it, but yeah.
The Fury is really interesting because again, he's dealing with telekinesis, but he's dealing with it on a whole different way and on a whole different scale. I think you'd find that interesting. Mm-hmm. You might like it.
Okay. Well, yeah. Thank you very much, Phil, for joining me on this discussion. And,
again, I'm always happy to talk movies with you, and hopefully one day we'll be able to talk good movies.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a few that might be coming up that we could possibly talk about.
Thank you very much for having me as part of your 1999 retrospective.
Yeah.
And I am very pleased, and it was my pleasure to take part with you today.
And thank you for choosing movies that were sort of off the beaten path of what we think of as 1999, because I mean, even if these movies aren't good movies, at least they're movies that I feel like there are discussions to be had in them. I mean, I think that's definitely something that you can tell by the discussions we had about the Rage and about End of Days as well.
Look, plenty of people have talked over the last 20 years about American Beauty and what a great film it is, and the casting and the writing and all that.
Yeah.
How many people have spent an hour sitting around talking about the Rage Carrie 2?
Exactly.
Probably not many.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you, Brian.
I'd like to thank Phil Fasso for joining me today to discuss the Rage Carrie 2. When I first saw the movie, I kind of expected a pretty interesting conversation, and it's definitely something worth talking about, I think, for a lot of various reasons. And I'd like to thank Phil for joining me and suggesting that movie. Hit me up on patreon.com/Sonic Cinema. If you subscribe in the middle of a month, that first month will be free, and it won't be until the beginning of the next month that you get charged. Hit me up on YouTube, Sonic Cinema podcast page for quick takes and other podcasts. For now, though, this is Brian Scuttle, and thank you for joining me at www.sonic-cinema.com.